Welcome to the Upside Podcast, powered by Upside Global and hosted by Julian Blinn, founder and CEO of Upside Global. The Upside Podcast is listened to weekly by over 6,000 sports and tech executives from all sports leagues and teams in the United States and around the world. Julian has been developing technologies for professional sports teams for over 10 years and has worked for major tech companies along with sports tech startups. In each episode, Julian interviews global leaders in sports to share knowledge on emerging technology in the sports industry and how these technologies can help improve the performance of individuals and organizations, both on and off the playing field. And now here's your host, Julian Blinn.
So today we have the honor of interviewing a group of Formula One NASCAR sports innovation and performance experts. So I will do a couple of introductions around the table. So first we have Clayton Green, an experienced human performance coach that worked in Formula One. He was at McLaren for 12 years with multiple-time Formula One champions, Lewis Hamilton. So Clayton, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Julian.
It's great to have you back. And then we have Kevin Kidd, a top sports motorsports executive in NASCAR. He now works as a North American motorsports competition director for Stellantis. So Kevin, welcome back as well.
Thanks, Julian. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you back as well. And then we have Simon Reynolds, an F1 performance trainer. He's now the director of Formula One, Perform Ltd. He previously worked for McLaren for 14 years as a McLaren driver performance manager. He was the performance coach of Keikki Kovalainen. So Simon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction.
You're welcome. So guys, I'm going to jump right into the question. So the first question is about innovation, the innovation landscape. So both Formula One and NASCAR are rooted in tradition, but increasingly driven by innovation. So how do each of your organizations balance heritage with a constant push for technological advancements? Anybody wants to start? Anybody?
I'll start. I'll start. I've lent into the camera, so I'll begin. Yeah, I mean it is a difficult one. I mean, I don't think F1 does have a big tradition, certainly, and a big history, but I don't think the teams are necessarily kind of restricted by their tradition, if you like. They can be very proud of it and want to present it and obviously play off it if it's been successful. But in order to be competitive in F1, it is very much about the innovation side. It is about how can you get any kind of edge over your competitors, and normally that's a technological edge in F1 because they do have a bit more freedom over what they can create in terms of a racing package. So definitely history is important, tradition is important, but I would say innovation is what really drives the teams. The sport probably wants to hold on to the tradition more, but the teams are happy to just go down the innovation route wherever possible.
So a quick point on that. So I'm not an F1 expert, I'll be honest, right? But when I watch an F1 race and I see sometimes F1 teams literally winning multiple championships, and all of a sudden the following year, for some reason, there's something going with the car and they just lost it. I mean, they just, another team had just caught up to them. And obviously it's the car, I'm sure, but it's got to be the driver, but mostly the car. And I'm assuming when you make little tweaks, that can have big consequences. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I mean, the rules package for the cars changes quite frequently in F1. So we've got a big rules change coming up for the 26th season, where they're changing the power units, they're changing things to do with the aerodynamics as well. And you tend to get a reshuffling of the pack at that point in time in terms of who's got the best package in order to go racing with. Obviously, everyone's trying to produce the best package that they can, but no one quite knows where any of the other teams are. So you never quite know at the start of a new rules change what's going on there. The drivers have always been the best that they can. Obviously, they're limited by some of the technology that they have at their fingertips.
And by the way, I'll cut that out, but is there me? I can hear some feedback a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay. But
I can't hear anything.
All right. So, but to me, it sounds like sometime when you're making some changes to the car, maybe sometimes due to a new regulation, that can change everything. Or another team is going to cut up to everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, it's like that on a week by week basis. I mean, not so much now as it used to be when Simon and I were, at McLaren and in F1, when there was a bit more freedom to spend whatever money you had available on the cars. So in every week, the cars would be different. There would be little upgrades and stuff coming, and the drivers had to always adapt to a changing performance package underneath them, and to kind of adapt and innovate their driving style to still get the best out of the car. But when you do get those big rule changes, it's completely different. That's what people often think the drivers aren't doing very well, but it's not the drivers. It's you say the technology has changed.
But does it feel like sometimes, yes, the new regulation, but sometimes maybe the team changing something, and that it really they were not expecting the car to function that way? Is that accurate or no?
Yeah, I mean the teams are pretty good now with all the like the modeling, the simulator driving they've got, the wind tunnel data. They normally arrive with their tech at the racetrack having a pretty good understanding of how it is going to perform in real life. So they don't tend to get caught out that often by that. Sometimes it does, but typically they do have a pretty good correlation between what they're doing in like the virtual world, if you like, and how that performs in the real world.
No, that makes sense. Well, thank you, Clayton. Kevin, Simon, any thoughts?
Yeah, on the NASCAR side, the story is very similar, surprisingly. I think a lot of folks probably think that Formula One and NASCAR aren't very similar, but when you lift the hood up, you'll find that in NASCAR, we're doing a lot of the same activities. Our simulation efforts, our total engineering efforts really are scaled by budget. So, we obviously have a little bit less budget to work with than Formula One teams, but the types of activities, the things that we're doing are very similar. So when we unload at a racetrack, for the most part, most teams that are operating, kind of middle to high end of the field have things sorted out pretty well. And to the tune of, we literally only have 15 minutes of practice before we jump straight into qualifying. And it's put a premium on sorting yourself out virtually so that you are in the ballgame right off the truck. To kind of touch on the heritage piece, heritage is something that's very much part of our sport. It's something that we all have a lot of respect towards. But quite frankly, it's good for telling marketing stories. When we really focus on the competition aspect, we try to live at the bleeding edge of technology, just the same as the Formula One guys do. Because in the end, motorsports worldwide is pretty similar. We're taking ignorant pieces of metal and carbon fiber, and we're trying to make them go as fast as possible around a circuit. And you're doing that on 4, pieces of rubber. So the physics that drive this are the same worldwide. The concepts are the same. Human beings are the same. How to get the most out of people. A lot of similarities. The biggest differences, again, kind of get driven towards budget and how much money you can throw at the problem. But in the end, we're all trying to do the same thing.
Thank you, Kevin. And before I let Simon jump in, if I ask you guys to win races and championship, can you win the championship with the best car but not the best driver?
I would say in F1 it's possible, because I think there's a bit more freedom. From what I know of NASCAR, I mean, I would say I think there's a bit more freedom in the development and the setup of the technology, so you can have a bigger performance gap in from one car to the other that a driver, no matter how good they are, wouldn't be able to kind of bridge that for you. So it is possible. It tends to be the best drivers seem to end up at the best teams as well. But it could happen theoretically.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's an interesting question because the below Formula One in Formula 4, 3, and 2, it's more of a driver's championship, and there's only a certain amount of setup changes that you can make to the cars, and the engineers obviously work to changing setup to the conditions and the environment that affect that. But effectively, the drivers do make a big difference to the actual results compared to F1. And F1, and not taking anything away from Formula One drivers at all or teams, is it's a definite collaboration between the fact that the technology and innovation that Clayton was talking and discussing about when it comes to Formula One, it's very much driven by innovation, technology, which then drives through to the automotive sector. And the drivers themselves obviously have to keep themselves in optimal condition, and they are all very skillful drivers, and you have to be at that level. Is that the car will stand still without the driver, but the technological differences between teams may be enough for a driver with maybe slightly less capability. But I can't see that too much, because the drivers are pretty equal in their skill delivery, maybe some more than others. And the car is in a lot of ways set up for that particular driver and their preferred driving styles in terms of how much different type of package they want and how they want the car to move around the track. For example, whether they want the rear of the car to feel a little bit looser, for example, and that's probably Kevin's sort of more expertise in that respect.
So on that point, Simon, I think you're right. Sometimes you see like some younger drivers, right? They do very well, like F3, F2, right? They're just winning everything. And when they get to Formula One, until they get the best car, one of the best cars, they're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to see that necessarily, right? Then we'll keep winning championship. Is that a fair assessment? Or?
It could be. I mean, you've got some very skilled drivers like Gabriele Bortoleto, who won the Formula 2 championship. Extremely skilled driver. Then you've got Behrman, that obviously came through. Again, very skilled driver. And as Clayton was saying, a lot of the highly skilled drivers end up in the best cars. And maybe the highly skilled drivers just have more experience, maybe, than some of the new drivers coming through, who tend to go with sort of teams that haven't been performing as well necessarily. And it's an interesting conundrum, and it's worth a longer discussion, especially with Kevin's input from that expertise side and being the driver's side and things like that. I mean, it's not really my expertise in that respect. It's more the actual driver performance, but it's a really interesting question, I think.
Yeah, Julian, I think it's interesting in NASCAR. We are different from Formula One in regards to the amount of creative control we have over the cars. We're very much a homologated, I don't go so far as to say specified series, but it's approaching that. And so the ability for us to really build a race car that's just substantially better than our competitors, that's harder today than it's ever been. And so in that regard, the best drivers and teams, and I want to kind of put those together for very specific purposes, they absolutely rise to the top. And so I've had the good fortune of working with drivers of sort of all sides of the thing. I've worked with the very best Hall of Fame drivers, and I've also worked with very young guys who are just starting their journey, and I've worked with the guys in between. And what I can tell you without a doubt within the NASCAR world is that the very best drivers, those Hall of Fame guys, their actual skill behind the wheel to make a car go fast isn't what separates them. Obviously they're operating at a high level, the same as everybody else, but that's not the difference. The difference is how cerebral they are and their ability to think their way through a race. The game is just so much slower for them, so to speak, and they can make good decisions on a more frequent basis. And so that's what happens during the race. But then the other side of this that I think is an intangible that the very best guys have is their ability to kind of direct and guide the team and make the team stronger with the feedback, with the direction that they give on what they're feeling in the car, sort of the just overall guidance. They have that experience, they have that knowledge, and they can point a team in a direction that generally speaking leads to positive outcomes. Race car drivers who can do that and also go fast, those are the ones that win the races.
So Kevin, on that point, I'm just trying to understand. So you're saying that the driver's ability, the cognitive aspect, to make quick decisions on the go, that's what separates them from being a very, very good driver.
Mhm.
And you mentioned the ability to provide feedback to the team, right? I want this tweak to be made. But to that point, in Formula One, that's, you see that F1 drivers do that all the time. They look at the race again, and I'm assuming they provide input, right? We need to make those changes, right? So I think there's similarities. And I'm sure in F1, the reaction time makes a big difference too, right? Because it's even a higher speed, right? So
Well, definitely, we've always kind of alluded to the fact that it was more of a cognitive task that the F1 drivers had to perform, but physical fatigue starts to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So it's about being able to offset the physical elements so they could do what they needed to do cognitively. I have a point. I'm not sure where I was going with that one now, but yeah, no, definitely. There's some big similarities. I know what I was going to say, and the drivers that could communicate with their engineers and the team better would always do better. Obviously, the engineers had to set the car up for the driver to get the best out of the driver. Drivers used to always like talking about how things felt, and then the engineers obviously want to deal in numbers and stuff. But the best drivers could find a way of communicating feelings into car setup changes, and then they'd have a vehicle that did everything that they wanted as well. So it wasn't just about having the skill; you had to integrate yourself into the team and lead it and develop it as well. Definitely.
Yeah,
makes sense. Simon, any thought before we jump to the next question?
No, I think we covered that really well.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is obviously about AI, data integration. There's a lot of talk about AI every single day, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest topic, right now. But so artificial intelligence and predictive analytics are transforming decision making in motorsports, right? Always been. But how are AI and data systems currently being used in Formula One and NASCAR, from race strategy to driver performance? And what do you guys think it's next when it comes to AI, right? So every talk, for example, about, and that's probably a bad analogy, right? Like ChatGPT, and then you hear guys like the CEO of Google saying that's 2 years old already. That's 2 years old. That's done. So what is your thoughts on AI and data integration?
I think we're still very early days on this journey,
Yeah.
but it is a journey, and if you're not on board for the journey, then you're probably going to get left behind in motorsports pretty quickly. When I look at AI as a topic and how we're trying to utilize it, maybe near and dear to Clayton and Simon's heart, we're trying to do things. We're trying to make the easy decisions more automated. A typical NASCAR race, and the way NASCAR teams are structured, and boy, we could argue about whether this structure is the right way or not. I have strong opinions on it, but it all kind of funnels up to largely one person who's making a lot of decisions on behalf of the team during a race. That one person gets overloaded just like that. And if we can use AI to help automate some of those decision-making processes and really serve up the right answers at the right time, and have it to be trustworthy and something that the crew chief ultimately believes in and depends on, now all of a sudden we have freed up some cognitive load to allow the crew chief then to focus on the hard decisions that, quite frankly, AI might not be capable of handling just quite yet. So if we can just reduce his cognitive load, free up some space to really take on the tough problems, I think personally that's where we're at today. As we look forward, down the line, it's just going to continue to grow, and who knows in 10 years time where we end up with this and where it goes. But I think, again, being in early days, it's just trying to take some of the easy answers and get them off the plate.
Now, Kevin, before I let Simon and Clayton jump in, but when you see you got one person who's overloaded in information, are you talking about the GM of the team, or are you talking about the driver, or what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's the crew chief. During the race, the crew chief is kind of the main guy that's making all these decisions, the strategy. He's the head coach of the team. No different than a race engineer in Formula One, similar roles. And the difference, maybe I'm being a little presumptuous when I say this, but from the Formula One standpoint, I think the team structure is a little flatter, and there's a strategy group that's kind of running over here, and the race engineer is probably the guy communicating to the driver, but he's taking input from a whole lot of different sources to help spread the load a little bit. A crew chief in a modern day NASCAR team, it's a very top down organization, and so the crew chief literally is the guy that's handling strategy. He's the guy that's handling the car performance. He's the guy that's trying to navigate the psychology of the driver, and communicate with the spotter, and keep the owner of the team off his back all through this whole process. So he's got a lot on his plate.
Sounds like. Thank you, Kevin. Clayton, Simon, any thoughts on that? AI data integration?
I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, it sounds like that crew chief does have a really difficult, really difficult job. So, I bet that they're all over AI to try and take some of that decision-making load away from them. Obviously, I mean, Simon and I have been out of McLaren for a little while now. AI wasn't around when we were there, but McLaren was, and F1 as a whole, was always into big data. It was always about what can we measure. If we could measure something, let's measure it. Let's collect the data on it. We don't necessarily know what we're going to do with it right now, but the opinion was always, why wouldn't you measure something if you could? So you always end up with so much information. There was a danger of like paralysis of analysis going on. So they're always then looking at, well, how can you mine the big data? How can you do predictive analytics on that? And this was before AI was kicking in. So I would imagine now there is a massive push to integrate it as much as possible. Like Kevin said, to try and reduce the cognitive load on the individuals that have got to make kind of strategy decisions. I mean, in F1, if it was a really boring race, then the engineers were really happy that they'd done their job really well, because it really was about, how do we take any kind of chance out of this? How do we control all the variables? How do we predict everything that could happen? And I can only see AI being a tool that they'll be heavily invested in, unless it gets restricted at all. I mean, I don't know what's going on in F1. I imagine they wouldn't, because it's all about innovation, but I'd quite like to see some of those tools, like some driver aids and stuff, being taken away, and actually see the human performance element a little bit more exploited. But I'm sure they will go to town on AI at some point.
And maybe, Clayton, what you said, there was no AI. I mean, back then it was machine learning algorithm. Some people sometimes say AI is so much more today, but honestly, it's just algorithm and machine learning. So maybe back then there was already AI, I think, but that just from the outside, right? So because you can't operate a Formula One without some kind of algorithm and analytics and all that, right?
I mean, we used to have, I can't remember what the numbers were. It was like 200 different sensors just on the car, giving you feedback in real time as to what different parts of the car were doing. I mean, the driver back then didn't really have any sensors on them. I'm hoping that has changed a bit more now. But yeah, it was all about as much data as possible. More was better generally.
Well, I tell you, in 2017, when I worked on a project in McLaren, I always remember this. They told me we're capturing, well, in the Formula One race, I think they're capturing 12 billion data points. 12 billion. And I was like, this is just outstanding, right? So, but you see just as much data collected in NASCAR too.
So it's interesting in NASCAR, traditionally in NASCAR, zero data, like none.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about 5 or 6 years ago that opened up a little bit, to the point where each car, has a steering sensor, has throttle and brake, and GPS. So we have location of the car and speed and engine RPM, things of that nature. Very simple when compared to Formula One. Formula One, 200 channels, 300 channels. There's probably not much that's not getting measured on a Formula One car. In NASCAR, we keep it very simple by rule. Obviously, us as race teams, we would, put as many sensors on the car as we could if we were allowed to. Here's where it gets interesting, though. in Formula One, it's my understanding that each team has access to their car's worth of data, and that's kind of it. In NASCAR, we have access to every car in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So not only can we analyze our data, but we can analyze every, data point of our competitors as well, which gives us a huge runway for analysis to determine all kinds of things. We could spend a whole podcast just on that. It is a ton of data, even though it's a small samples, of sensors per car, spreading it across 40 cars. Really makes it a complex challenge to be able to harness that data and drive insight for real-time decision making. It's a fun challenge. We've been at it now for 2 or 3 years, and we've got a long way to go still, I feel. But the things that we've accomplished and the insights that we're driving these days are pretty fun. It's a pretty fun space to be playing in right now.
And now, so it's interesting, Kevin. You said 5 years ago, almost no data, correct?
That's right.
So who made the decision, not only to guys to get all that data, but to share the data across teams? I mean, was it a decision made by the NASCAR lead, the office, or who made that decision?
Yeah, data has always been controlled by NASCAR. The ability to have it or not have it, and who sees what, that's a league decision. And they had reached a point where, quite frankly, they wanted to modernize the sport a little bit. They recognized that they needed to kind of take a few steps forward to keep fans engaged, and keep in mind, a lot of this data is fan accessible as well. So the ability to keep fans engaged, bring new fans in, but in beyond that, OEM pressures, big car companies like technology and kind of want to have that part of the story as well. So there's enough good reasons to sort of shift the sport that way. And then in terms of sharing it across the industry, that's kind of the NASCAR way. We are very much an open garage. If you go to a NASCAR race and just kind of walk through, there's no walls partitioning individual spaces of garage. It's kind of all out for everybody to see. And so when it comes to data, NASCAR just viewed it the same way. Let's make this democratized. Let's let everybody have the opportunity to get the same data and see where it goes.
Interesting. Now, Simon, what is your take on AI and data integration?
Yeah, I think the more data points that you're collecting, if you're collecting hundreds of data points, and I can't speak for Formula One, but then AI is then able to make predictions with future predictions for the following seasons, and that becomes extremely valuable. I'm not quite sure Formula One's as open as NASCAR by the sounds of it, Kevin, but yeah, it's very much more secretive and closed off to some degree. And I think collecting as many data points as possible and having AI technology to be able to run that data and look at trends and forecasts and predictions for the future, I think is probably very valuable. But I can't say for what Formula One are doing at the moment with that.
And Simon, so to your point about Formula One being more like it's a closed ecosystem, right? You don't share as much data, but I'm assuming if an engineer from McLaren goes to Ferrari, you got to assume he brings the playbook with him. I mean, he would know some trade secrets, things that are not known by the public, and will bring that back to the engineers at Ferrari, correct? I mean, I'm assuming, but
I wouldn't know, to be honest. I'm probably not the right person to ask.
Okay.
I'm sure contractually there would be some restrictions on that. I'm sure it happens. Indirectly, it's almost impossible not to. But we did have an issue at McLaren, didn't we? Was it 2008? We got kicked out of the constructors because we seemed to be in possession of Ferrari data. So it happens. But
yeah. Same with any sports, right? Soccer or basketball or whatever, right? When there's changes in leagues, people talk, right? So, hey, the next topic I want to cover was human performance and training, which is probably more your area, Clayton and Simon's. Although I know, Kevin, you work with trainers and all that. So when it comes to preparing drivers and pit crews, what are the biggest differences between how Formula One and NASCAR approach training, simulations, and human performance optimization? Because it's not just about the driver, right? The pit crew is a big part of it. I know, Kevin, we talked about that actually the last time. So what are your guys' thoughts about human performance and training?
Yeah,
You want to go first, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the roles within motorsport, the pit crew's role or the race team's role is the preparation of the car and to have a positive effect during the race to manage the changes of tires, obviously, in as quick a time as possible, and to react as quick as possible to changes that are occurring in the race with weather conditions and things like that, and then preparing the car in accordance with the strategies that are created and planned by the engineers. And then the driver's obvious job is to pilot the car around the track as fast as possible. And that sort of orchestral synergy has to be succinct in order to win a race or perform as well as possible. So in order to maximize human performance, there are similarities across the board in terms of optimizing recovery, maximizing performance through using innovations and technologies to monitor the individuals of the team, and then to cohesively, as they do with monitoring the car and collecting data points, is at this stage to also collect data and find trends in recovery between individuals. For example, the race team that are moving between different countries, suffering at times with jet lag, and their circadian rhythms and their physiology markers are affected during those transitions between different countries. The same with drivers as well, although drivers might have a little bit more comfort than maybe a team or in economy class as opposed to private jets, for example. However, it's extremely important that is the case, because drivers are the ones piloting the cars and putting themselves in hostile environments, etc. So the point that I'm getting to is that when we come to human performance, we are now treating the pit crews as athletes. And I think Clayton and myself and the medical team and the chief medical officer, Dr. Keikki Kovalainen at the time, were really innovating that in the early days of 2007, 8, 9, of training the pit crews as athletes. And from that point forward, obviously, the teams then started to do the same, and seeing that pit stop times were coming down as a consequence. And now we're talking, seconds as opposed to multiple seconds in the earlier days when the pit crews weren't necessarily treated as athletes.
And to your point, Simon, about there are times where there was some issue with some pit crew members and they were struggling, and that really impacted maybe the performance on that side, or you've seen that in the past, or to your point, which is very important, right, to treat the pit crew members as athletes and training them as such, right?
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about training people as athletes, it's really training them in a certain structured way, periodized programming, for example, and assessing their athleticism to then work on areas that they need to improve and develop, maximizing areas of strength, and really ensuring that across the board, globally across the team, that you have a good synergy between their athletic abilities. I mean, the pit crew is a great example of that, where each person on the pit crew has a particular role, and they have to perform that intervention as quick as possible.
So to your point, when an F1 race is in Singapore and the humidity is like crazy high, you got to make sure that the pit crew is getting hydrated, so they don't get lightheaded because of the humidity and they're getting dehydrated, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the environment is extremely hostile, especially in Singapore, for drivers as well as pit crew, as well as all the team, that they have to have a hydration strategy, potentially using supplementation of electrolytes within their water, because as they're sweating in those environments, they're losing salts. And they're losing the balance of electrolytes, which can affect their cognitive performance and also their physical performance. How muscles actually turn on, switch on, etc., requires a balance of electrolytes. So performing the physical as well as mental tasks is extremely important that they manage their nutritional needs and also hydration needs.
So you really have to monitor the motor skills and the cognitive skills, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So memory and focus and thinking and etc. is all very important for every single individual.
Makes sense. Thank you, Simon. Clayton or Kevin, any thoughts on human performance training?
Well, I'm just going to mention. I mean, I think the biggest difference that I can see between like F1 and NASCAR would certainly come around to the pit crew. I mean, I know in NASCAR, you have a designated pit crew of people who are kind of ex-athletes, aren't they? And it's a very physically demanding role that they undertake. And the pit crew in F1, I mean, we have, Simon, correct me if I get this wrong, was it 3 people on each corner changing a tyre? So you've got 12 people around the car, you've got front, rear jacks, you've got like 14 people or so to change 4 tyres, which is why we can do it a bit quicker than NASCAR. But those individuals, then, although they're trained much more athletically now than they ever were, they aren't athletes. They are the mechanics that work in the garage on setting up the car, and that is their first and most important role. But then from that pool of mechanics, because we couldn't take extra people to a race to just do the pit stops for us, you'd pick the best people, get them into the right positions. There was a lot of sports analysis done on kind of what body shape, what kind of strength do people need for certain things, vision track, all sorts of things that you bring in from a normal kind of athletic domain, but they weren't athletes in the first place. So a lot of the training was then also about keeping them healthy over the course of the season. The last thing you wanted is some kind of musculoskeletal injury that then means a core member of your pit team's gone and you're subbing in someone who hasn't got the same kind of experience. Because any little mistake, when you've got 14 people trying to work together in 2 to 3 seconds, can really blow it apart if you're not well synced up.
Make great points, Clayton. Kevin?
Yeah, so Clayton, I think you touched on right where I was going to go, and I'll elaborate further. In NASCAR, our pit crews, and when I refer to pit crews, I'm talking about the 5 guys that jump over the wall and change tires and put fuel in the car. They are athletes, hands down. These guys played college football or college baseball. Not many basketball players, but I don't entirely know why that is, but a lot of football and a lot of baseball. And these guys, they were on a path where, they were probably pretty successful in college. Maybe not successful enough to make a professional career out of it, or maybe they got to pro football, the NFL, and lasted a season or 2 and then sort of flamed out. These are guys who are, call it mid-20s. They're looking to extend their athletic career doing something. They discover that NASCAR racing is an opportunity to do that, and they, quite frankly, if they keep fit and catch on, they can do this all the way out until 40 or 41 years old. And so this type of athlete really is our bread and butter. That's who we go after. We have very strong recruiting platforms in place that actually very proactively go out to colleges and universities. We're making connections with coaches and really trying to establish this pipeline to bring players into our system. Once they're in our system, it typically takes, the shortest I've seen is about 6 months, all the way up to maybe 2 years of training and getting folks acclimated to what a pit stop actually is, and then they're ready to go. And so these folks all come in, they're very much clued in already on what strength and conditioning looks like, working with human performance coaches. They've come from programs that have all the coolest things from a data collection standpoint. They're already, in large part, already trained up on how to use the data. We're getting athletes who come in to us from the athletic and human performance side in a very advanced state. And so what we've had to do as an industry is we've had to kind of almost catch up. Like, we've had these athletes who come to us with all this, kind of knowledge about how to do the human performance thing. And us race car guys have had to kind of adapt our systems and be able to kind of ramp that up pretty quickly to be able to cater and quite frankly, recruit the best athletes. The NASCAR pit stop is very much an athletic event. If you watch it, it's very physical. There's a lot of, fast twitch motions and quick cuts and hand-eye coordination. There's a lot of cognitive that goes into this, identifying problems quickly, being able to quickly adapt to it. And so from our side, the training that we put into it, we've got strength and conditioning coaches. We've got, psychologists on staff, sports psychologists on staff. We've got, all the training rooms and the personnel that go with that. If you come to, I'll just use RFK Racing as an example because it's my most recent data point. If you come to RFK Racing now and you look at the resources, the facilities we've put in place to support this part of our program, it would kind of remind you probably of a very small Division I school in call it North American terms. We've got some pretty impressive things that we've thrown at the problem, and these athletes, this is all they do. They pit cars for a living. They don't work on cars. They're not mechanics or fabricators. They're not engineers. These guys are all athletes who are training every day to pit vehicles on a race on Sunday.
Makes sense. Hey guys, we've got 7 minutes left because I got to jump at 11 and I edit that. But do you guys want to talk about the question of future technologies and sustainability, or the cultural and structural differences in innovation, F1 versus NASCAR? Which one do you think is the most appealing to you?
Either one's fine with me.
No preference.
Maybe culture, I think, more than.
Okay, because I think we already talked about technology, right? Innovation. Yeah. So, guys, last question, right? So, Formula One often operates as a global R&D lab, right? While NASCAR has deep roots in fan engagement and accessibility, although listening to Kevin, I'm thinking maybe I'm wrong on that one. How do these different culture influence the pace and type of innovation across both series?
On the NASCAR side, I mean, just jump straight into that. From our side, we are absolutely a fan engagement sport. We're nothing without our fans. We're nothing without the television broadcast. Very much we cater to our fans, and that's what's most important. I think maybe culturally, what's a little different than Formula One is that our fan base really resonates with the stories of the drivers and the threads that kind of get pulled in and out with the drivers. And quite frankly, American market, we're a little bit I don't know if we're unique or not, but fans enjoy drama. So the stories that can add drama to the sport, those are the things that really sort of engage. Whereas I think, and again, maybe being a little presumptuous here, but on the Formula One side, fans really resonate in some part to the technology story. Technology is deeply rooted in both sides, in Formula One and NASCAR. We just tend not to tell that story quite as often and really lean hard into the drivers and what's going on in the dramatic parts of the sport, who's fighting who and why are they fighting, and what kind of drama we're going to see on the racetrack come Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, and to your point on the fan engagement for NASCAR, remember, like during COVID, I think NASCAR was one of the first leagues, I should say, to really bring the fan digitally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they jumped on the metaverse. Not to say that Formula One team didn't jump on the metaverse and all that stuff, but I think, like to your point, the fan experience is very important, I think, for NASCAR. NASCAR has become kind of a pioneer when it comes to digital and fan engagement, right? So, Clayton or Simon, any thoughts on that last question?
I think fan engagement is important in F1, and I think there's a growing part of F1 now. I mean, I think F1 kind of found itself in quite a privileged position, if you like, with kind of the global backdrop that it managed to establish, and it does have a huge following. But this is my own opinion as opposed to all the fans that are out there. But I'm never convinced that all the fans really know the intricacies of F1 and appreciate that the drivers don't all have a level playing field to compete on. Because you do talk to a lot of people who are always like, "Oh, why is so and so doing so badly this year?" And you're like, "Well, they're not, but the team, the car is not where it was." So I think there is a big opportunity for the fan engagement side to develop in F1. Although I think that the teams do a lot of fan engagement themselves, rather than F1 as a marketplace. But it's definitely starting to get there now. Simon, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the fan engagement is crucial. Drive Survive was a huge influence on fan engagement, and I think the documentaries that Netflix and other companies that have produced on motorsport have had huge engagement from the younger population. I think McLaren have done an incredible job at fan engagement together with other teams. But I think with having Lando and Oscar, who are very charismatic and young, both exceptionally talented and great with the fans, I think they have really harnessed the fan engagement to such a high degree together with other teams as well. And I can only talk from McLaren, having personal experience there, but I've seen the difference that they've been able to make with fan engagement within F1, and especially with the younger viewers getting more into the sport, and obviously female engagement as well, which I think is extremely important. I'm very lucky to have been the performance coach of Ella Lloyd in F1 Academy for the past few years, and she was in Ginetta, having no karting experience, and deciding in 2022 to start racing. And she's proved that having those attributes and the physical abilities and the charisma that she has and the engagement she has with fans to bring the females up to the levels of the males and giving them a run for their money within a sport that has been male dominated. And I'm so pleased that is happening. I feel so fortunate that I'm able to work with Ella in that capacity. And so Formula E, with fan boosts and the engagement they bring about with the electric technologies, and having a lot of the ex-Formula One drivers drive within those seasons, it really does boost fan engagement. So I think we're definitely of an era with social media that fan engagement for teams is extremely important and valuable.
A great point, and a great point about Drive to Survive. Like I think I learned a ton just watching it. You just couldn't get off the screen. You gotta keep watching, and there's drama. It's fun. It's fun to watch, right?
There is a NASCAR documentary on Netflix as well. I can't remember the name of it, but I've watched 2 seasons. It was very good. So
yes, tune into it. It's good.
It's great. Right, guys. Hey, I'm the end of the podcast, but thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening. To access past episodes and other research, articles, and analysis of sports technology, please visit our website, theupside.us. Subscribe to the Upside newsletter and receive full access to our sports tech business letter and website. Royalty-free music is provided by ibaudio.com. The Upside podcast provides timely insights and interviews with global leaders in sports technology. Until next time, keep looking to the upside.